If you're feeling in a rut with your photography or you just don't feel inspired to pick up your camera, then this is the episode for you. I'm sharing with you a quick 30-minute photography challenge that you can do that will help you break out of your photography rut. Plus, I'm going to give you some prompts for inspiration while you're doing it. So be sure to stay tuned. Hey there, I'm Audrey-Anne, founder of Live Snap Love, and I'm on a mission to help photographers just like you grow their photography skills quickly and in a way that feels simple and easy so you can shorten the learning curve and get photos you love faster. I created this Photography Made Simple podcast to share simple, actionable techniques, helpful insights, and practical advice on all things photography. So if you're itching to take your photos to the next level, whatever that level may be, you're in the perfect place. So let's get started. So like many photographers, I go through peaks and valleys with photography. There are times when I feel inspired by pretty much everything around me and I want to pick up my camera all of the time. And I enjoy taking photos, I enjoy experimenting and trying out different things. Then there are times when the opposite happens, when I don't feel inspired or motivated. And this is when I either don't pick up my camera at all, or I pick it up more out of habit than desire. And it actually feels like an effort to take a photo. And when I get like this, I tend not to love the results, which totally makes sense when you think about it. When you are detached from the process of taking photos and you feel uninspired, it's not really surprising that the photos you take look detached and uninspired and boring. And it's a vicious cycle. You don't want to pick up your camera, so you stop photographing. And then when you pick it up again, you still feel detached or bored. And then your photos aren't coming out the way you wanted them to. So you feel even more demoralized and therefore even less likely to want to pick up your camera. Now, I know that I am not alone in feeling this. I hear from other photographers all the time who tell me that they feel like they're in a rut or they're bored or they feel like they've run out of things to photograph or they're forever photographing the same things in the same way, in the same place, time and time again. And this is true of both hobbyists and professional photographers alike. And it can happen whatever stage of your photography journey you are at. So this can happen to new photographers all the way through to experienced professionals who have been shooting for years. Now, if you've been a follower of Live Snap Love for a while, you'll know that I always recommend firstly, probably taking a little time away from your camera just to get a bit of a break, but then coming back to it by setting yourself a challenge. Now, I have a couple of go-to challenges that I do. I have about 3 that I do on a regular basis because I've been shooting now for, at least 10 years, more than that. 13 years, 17 years actually, since I first picked up a camera. So it's not really surprising that I can get a little bit bored of photographing the same things around me. So I have these challenges that I do on a semi-regular basis. Whenever I start to feel kind of uninspired or if I haven't picked up my camera for a while, I will do one of these. So I'm going to share one of them with you today. And this is the one I call the 30 in 30 challenge. Now, I love it because it's quick. It's all done in 30 minutes or so. You can do it absolutely anywhere, at home, in your back garden, at the beach, wherever. And it is super simple to do. So we don't need anything new equipment or exotic locations. We can just go with what we have for a short time and then we are done. So if you've been feeling like you're in a creative slump or you just haven't picked up your camera in a while, I am going to challenge you to give this a go. So for this 30 in 30 challenge, you are going to place some limitations on what you can shoot. And that's because, believe it or not, limitations can actually help your creativity. Instead of being able to shoot anywhere and shoot anything, which can actually feel overwhelming and lead to a bit of paralysis, we are going to limit ourselves to shooting in one location and for only 30 minutes. So here's what to do if you want to give this challenge a go. The first thing you need to do is choose a location for your photos. preferably outdoors, but there's no reason why you couldn't do this indoors. It might just be a little bit more challenging. So you're going to choose a location. It doesn't need to be somewhere exotic or even incredibly interesting. In fact, for this, the simpler, the better. So some examples would be your back garden, a small area in your local park. It could be your driveway, an area of the beach, even a small side street. If you are shooting indoors, you could go to one room in your home, for example. Now, what you don't want here is too wide an area to cover. Remember that the goal is to limit your options, and we're limiting where you can photograph in order to force you to see all the possibilities that exist even in one small location. So we want to keep it reasonably compact. Obviously, if it's at the beach, you're going to want to have some things other than just water and stands. You might choose a location that has some huts or some grounds or people or just something going on around there that gives you some options. Or if it's your park, you don't want to do the whole park. Again, choose an area that has some things in it that you can photograph and you can use to take your 30 different images. But we want to keep it reasonably small. Your location also doesn't need to be anywhere new. In fact, I would argue that it might be better to do this in somewhere that you're really used to, because it will be more of a challenge if you're in a location that you shoot in quite often. But really, it is entirely up to you. So indoors, outdoors, local, or go somewhere different if that feels better. You're just choosing a smallish area where you can limit the area in which you're taking photos. So the first rule of our 30 to 30 challenge is that you want to stay in that one location or one small part of that location if it's somewhere big like a long stretch of beach for all 30 photos. So once you have your location sorted, the next step is to set a timer for 30 minutes. Again, we are imposing limitations on ourselves and we're giving ourselves a specific time limit. Now, personally, I don't care if you end up going over the 30-minute limit, and I'm pretty sure you don't either. But what I want to make sure that you do is stick it out for at least 30 minutes. And I would ask you to try to be finished in that time. If you want, you could spend a bit of time scouting out the location and having a bit of a think before you start the timer. But the goal is I want you to set that timer for 30 minutes. If you feel like you need to go over for 1 or 2 minutes, that's absolutely fine. Then you are good to start shooting. Now, with a 30-minute window, that means you need to take a photo at least every minute. Now, that does sound quite difficult, but it's not as hard as it sounds. Sometimes you will get an item and you'll rattle off 5 different shots in 1 minute, and then it might take you another minute to find somewhere else and do the same thing. But we are going to make it a little bit more challenging because we want to make sure that each of the 30 photographs is unique and different from the others. So we want each photograph to show, it doesn't have to be of a different subject, but each one has to be unique and different from the other. So to recap, the 3 rules for the 30 and 30 challenge is you are doing this in one small location, you set a timer for 30 minutes, and then you take 30 unique photographs. Now, some points to note here. Although each photograph needs to be unique, each one does not need to be of a different subject. So for example, if you are at the park and you see some pretty flowers, you could take a photograph of one single flower from above and then step back and take the whole group of flowers. You could lie down on the ground and shoot them from below with your camera pointing up. You could photograph along the whole length of the flower bed and then take a wide angle shot of where the flowers are. It's just an example. So it's all the same subject, but you're taking several different images of that same subject. The second point to note is that you're not aiming to get 30 of the most out of this world, wall-worthy, shadeable, outstanding images you have ever taken. The goal here is simply to get your brain thinking creatively again, to start seeing the possibilities that are always around you, even in the most boring of locations. and simply to encourage you to try something new or that you just haven't done for a while. So let go of the idea immediately that you're going to get 30 stunning photographs. It's not going to happen. And remember, the goal is simply to kickstart your brain. We're getting that creative juices flowing again. Now, I know that you will probably start off standing there with your camera in your hand and just feeling blank. Or you might take the obvious ones first and then just feel yourself run dry. So this is where I have a couple of prompts to help you, just to help you see the possibilities that might be there in this location. Now, before I share them with you here, I do want to let you know that you can grab them over at the show notes for this episode at livesnaplove.com/14. So you don't have to bother writing these out. Just go to livesnaplove.com/14 and I've done it for you there. So here are your prompts if you feel a little bit uninspired when you get to the location. The first thing is try shooting from different angles. Get down on your tummy or stand up on something and look down, or shoot from the side, essentially trying and move around your subject and shoot from as many angles as possible. You can also try using a different aperture for more or less depth of field. You could get one image of an object that has a really wide depth of field and then another of the same object with an extremely shallow depth of field. If there are moving subjects, and that could be people, it could be children, it could be cyclists, it could be birds, it could be dogs, absolutely anything, cars, just freeze them for one image and then show the motion on another image. If there are inanimate objects such as a bench or a leaf or a flower, look for interesting lines, look for different patterns, look at interesting textures, shapes, or even color combinations. Try using different composition tools. You could use things like framing or rule of thirds or any of the golden compositions. Again, take a list of these with you if you would like. You could also try using the available light differently. You can try lighting the object or the subject from the back, from the side, from the front, and so on. And of course, you can take photos of people in your chosen location. So yes, portraits are allowed. If you have somebody with you, you could get them to go into the frame and either, stand for a portrait. You could get them to run about. Or if you're feeling particularly brave, you could ask a stranger if you could take their portrait. I have never built up the courage to do this, but it is something that you can do if you are a braver soul than I am. And finally, you could try getting up close to your object and capturing just a small detail or element of it, and then standing back and capturing the whole scene. So for example, say it's a park bench, you could capture just the rust. If it's anything like our park benches here in my city, the rust on the metal, just that small element of it, or the shape of the arm, and then you could stand back and photograph the whole bench. Again, that's just an example. But you can see that although you're limiting yourselves in terms of time and location, the possibilities for your 30 photos are actually endless. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and I hope it inspires you to pick up your camera and start shooting. And please let me know how you get on over on social media. You'll find me as @LiveSnapLove on both Facebook and Instagram. And you can even tag your photos with the hashtag LiveSnapLove so that we can find you on Instagram. Or feel free to leave a comment underneath the show notes for this episode at livesnaplove.com/14. I always love to hear from you wherever you want to get in touch. So thank you again for being here and for listening in each week. And I really hope you enjoy doing this challenge. Bye for now. So that wraps up this week's episode of Photography Made Simple. I'll be back at the same time, same place next week. But if you want more, head on over to livesnaplove.com/podcast, where you can find all the resources and the downloads mentioned, plus a whole lot more. Finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, please be sure to subscribe, and that way you won't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you again next week.